delay. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. On behalf of our CEO, Rob Boyle, and our board of directors and the entire team at Justine Peterson, we are honored that you chose to spend your afternoon with us. When we first began sharing this event, a few people asked a fair question: why is Justine Peterson hosting an event like this? I actually love that question because it gives us an opportunity to share not only what we're doing, but who we are. For more than 2 decades, Justine Peterson has been committed to one simple belief: everyone deserves access to opportunity. The belief that has guided every loan we've made, every entrepreneur we've coached, every family we've helped strengthen their financial future, and every partnership we've built throughout this community. We have never believed our work begins and ends with capital. We believe economic mobility begins with people. Sometimes the barrier is access to financing. Sometimes it's access to knowledge. Sometimes it's access to networks, resources, and someone willing to open a door that has been closed for far too long. Our role has always been to help remove those barriers. Today's event is simply another expression of that. For many people who have been wrongfully convicted and later exonerated, freedom is only the beginning. After years, sometimes decades, are taken from them, they return home carrying challenges that extend far beyond the courtroom. Finding employment, securing housing, rebuilding financial stability, restoring relationships, and rediscovering purpose. Those aren't just justice issues. They're community issues. They're economic issues. They're human issues. And when people face barriers to rebuilding their lives, organizations like Justine Peterson's have a responsibility to ask an important question: how can we help? This event isn't about politics. It isn't about taking sides. It's about people. It's about listening to stories that deserve to be heard. It's about understanding challenges that often go unseen. And it's about asking how we, as a business, nonprofit organization, community leaders, and neighbors can become part of the solution. If you've worked with Justine Peterson before, then you know this isn't new for us. We've always met people where they are. We've always believed that someone's past should never determine the value of their future. We've always invested in possibility. Today, we're simply expanding that same philosophy to another community that deserves opportunity, dignity, and hope. That is why we call this series Sharing the Why. Because when we understand someone's why, we begin to see them differently. We replace assumptions with understanding, judgment with compassion, and awareness with action. So, my hope is that every person leaves here today not only informed, but inspired to ask, what part can I play in creating a community where restoration is possible? Thank you again for letting me be here and for being willing to listen. It is now my privilege to introduce a man whose life reminds us that justice is about more than freedom. It's also about what comes after freedom. But before we get to that, I would be good if I did not announce our CEO, Mr. Robert Boyle.
quickly want to say thank you. You're welcome. I just want to say thank you for sharing our why. Maybe introducing Obie a little bit more,
Yes.
perhaps. But again, this is the first of the sharing our why, the first of many. So thank you again for your attendance, and especially Yolanda and Chris and Obie. Thank you for inaugurating our sharing our why. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Before I call Obie up, I'd like to read his bio. Maybe my glasses, I don't use this, okay? Obie Anthony, Justice Reform Advocate, founder and executive director of Exoneration Nation. I don't know how that sounds. Exoneration Nation. Obie Anthony is a nationally recognized justice reform leader, inspirational public speaker, and the visionary founder and executive director of Exoneration Nation. His journey from wrongful incarceration to national advocacy is both heartbreaking and powerfully transformative. At just 19 years old, Obie was wrongfully convicted of murder and sentenced to a life in prison. He spent 17 years incarcerated for a crime he did not commit. Before being exonerated and released in 2011, since then, Obie has turned his pain into purpose, becoming a tireless advocate for criminals, justice reform, and a fierce supporter of those re-entering society after wrongful imprisonment. In 2015, he founded Exoneration Nation, the first nonprofit organization in California led by and for exonerees. Under his leadership, Exoneration Nation has become a national model for reentry services rooted in healing justice, peer support, and survival leadership. Obie has spearheaded advocacy for California legislation, including Obie's Law, AB 672, AB 1909, and AB 701, and AB 703, all aimed at improving the lives and legal standings of wrongfully convicted. Obie is a sought-after speaker who has shared his story in policy, insights at institutions including USC, UCLA, UC Irvine, San Jose State, and the Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference. In addition to public speaking, he plays an active role in education and research. As a research associate and guest instructor at Touro University, California, Obie leads participatory action research on exoneree health and supports the next generation of public health leaders by mentoring Master of Public Health students. In recognition of enduring commitment to justice, high equity, and well-being of marginalized communities, Touro University awarded him its first ever honorary Master of Public Health in 2025. As the kids say, clock it. Obie serves on an advisory board for the Northern California Innocence Project, and Life After Justice, and maintains deep partnerships with the ACLU, Death Penalty Focus, and other reform center organizations. Today, Obie continues to fight for a world where no one is punished for a crime they didn't commit, and where all who survived wrongful incarceration have the resources, the respect, and the recognition they deserve. Can we clap? Can I hear together for all of you?
Thank you, everybody. Again, my name is Obie Anthony. Where am I now? 53 years old. I've been home now for 15 years. We have a little presentation I want to show you guys. It's a documentary. It sort of illustrates the work that we do, and specifically focuses on our healing the truth that we do. We realize that for us, Exonerated Nation, we realize and understand that wrongful convictions is a human rights issue. And not only is it a human rights issue, but it's an opportunity for the community to stand and defend those individuals who suffered for so long because of the crimes for which they did today, once they re-enter back into the community.
I got exonerated in 2011, September 30th. Just came back. Read a summation, the whole thing. I didn't know what he was going to say. And then he finally exonerates me, right? And he clears me, and then he ORs me. That same day, and OR means released on your own recognizance. You can just get out. At that moment, I just thought, this is all over. All the way home, great, yes. You know, I'm thinking about all of the things that I could possibly, be in, do all this stuff. The dude at the front, when I was getting my clothes, I was like, man, talking about whatever clothes is there, I don't think I'm gonna be able to fit them. That was over 18 years, like 18 years ago. Like, man, I'm gonna be skinny jeans and a tight shirt. I'm good. So he went in the back and got me somebody else's, pants, got this other big old shirt. That's all I had. I didn't have no gay money. They didn't give me no voucher to talk to nobody. Voucher to get nothing to eat. You don't trip on that stuff, for a couple of weeks. You don't even register, even after that, it's like what we call now the first 40 days. Right? Your first 40 days, because it's a lot of excitement and movement, everybody excited you out, and all this and this and that. Then the camera's off. 41st day, camera goes off, and now you're there by yourself. Look at what I got. Where I start at. On that 42nd day, I realized I had nothing. Wasn't no call coming in. Wasn't no place for me to go. In other words, because I needed, needed food stamps or, give me some, try to get some help with a job. Any of that. Been to several conferences, a couple of conferences at that point, was talking to other exonerees in the state of California, and they were struggling.
If he had committed the murder he was accused of, and been released from prison, he would have received gate money. He would have received social services, mental health services, and a whole other litany of services. So that became the first bill. The first bill was exactly that. The Exonerated Nation sponsored a bill to say if you're exonerated, you get gate money, and you get all the same services that a parolee would receive. And what was great is that Obie came to Sacramento and lobbied on behalf of that bill. And we surprised him at the very end of the process. We changed the bill and titled it Obie's Law. And he didn't know this was going to happen. I mean, it's very emotional because it was such a big deal for him. And gave it to him and said, here, we made an amendment to the bill. And he was blown away. He's like, wait, it says Obie's Law. It says Obie's Law. I said, you're the one who made this happen. It's now on the books. It's in the code. It says Obie's Law. And everyone who's wrongfully convicted and released from prison gets all of these services. But for him, it wouldn't happen. One of my proudest professional moments really. They're just moments in my life to be able to help him do that, honoring him.
2016, being conducted for Walker Stubbs Exonerated Nation. 2017, Obie's Law was put in place. 2018, ABT's case was put in place. 2019, 701, 703, and also AB 1909. Been on for 11 years. I
come forward.
Obie's not done yet. You know, there's a lot that we've done. Exoneration's passed bills in California. There's more to be done here. He's also looking across the country and federal. Really two things that we're looking at going forward. One is to take the housing bill and get that passed in other states. The second goal, Exoneration, is to take our policy nationwide, is to pass legislation in Congress and go to DC. And we're still developing what those ideas would be. Part of it is Social Security. That for those 15, 20, 30 years that you're in prison, you're not contributing, you're not benefiting from Social Security.
Old schoolers, you know, what they reference to me now, like me, who've been home 11, 12, 13 years, that can also benefit from the passage of those bills that's, you know, that can make us some profits.
Exonerated Nation retreats every year, twice a year, brings together zombies around the country.
And I can heal from him too. And he can heal from me, and vice versa.
And not just have them talk with each other, but also provide them skills and teach them to be leaders. Teach them to use their stories as a means to empower themselves, whether it's to go out and become advocates for other honorees or advocates in the community for whatever issue or problem they see.
It to us an opportunity to reach the more people that I can to tell my story, my testimony, and helping to change a lot of things in their life.
We're trying to develop those skills and also address their mental health. So these retreats we call leadership and healing retreats.
If you really know me, I'm a big old kid right now. So I like to clown and joke, and that's me. I make the best of every situation, even that life without parole that I didn't deserve and that I should never have been. I still make the best of the situation. It was a total, I think it was like 21 leaders from all around the United States. They was able to come in here and participate with the leadership during the retreat.
It's not just meeting other economy, it's meeting somebody that understands what it is, what did happen to you, what you're up against for your recovery. You know, you're healing.
One of the things that we've been trying to do with Exonerated Nation is look at opportunities to help heal or provide, healing opportunities, not just for the exonerees, but for their family members who support them because they need that support as well. This is our first retreat where we've been able to offer some healing sessions for the spouses and partners of the exonerees. Our next retreat is going to include children.
I was also hurting. Just believe me, I walked that mile with my son. Every moment I was always concerned as he heard what's going on in there. I couldn't just pick up the phone. I couldn't just go to him.
We do have a research arm, which is the participatory action research piece, which we're really proud of because we think it's super important for those with the lived experiences to be involved in all aspects of the research. The first project that we worked on was a qualitative research project that looked at the health and well-being of California exonerees. And what we found was across the board is this peer-to-peer connection. Therapy was important. There are lots of other details that came out throughout the interviews, but what was consistent across all of the interviews was important was being able to connect with other people who have the same or similar experiences.
It's so huge and so powerful. I feel like I'm more healed now, and then things that I didn't know that I was going through that now I look back and I'm like, oh, well, that's why I did that. Or this is, like it just opened my horizon or my eyes, and my heart just feels like it's like wants to burst right now, and the energy, and it's just like a celebration of our freedom, and then just seeing everybody hearing the stories, and it's like a family. It's so amazing.
It's not over with me. And that's when the real work is. The more to be able to heal, to move forward, to find happiness, and one of the reasons why Exonerated Nation is such an exciting organization and dynamic, and they really making a difference, is that there is a lot of focus on criminal justice reform and trying to reduce the number of folks getting into the criminal justice system, especially people of color, especially men of color. And that is, it should be a priority. There's so little attention on what happens to folks when they get out who have been wrongfully convicted. And when the system is so broken, and not only are we capturing too many people and for too long, we're also capturing people who didn't commit the crime or are innocent, subjecting them to the same type of punishment as somebody who did commit. It's really an example of how our legal system and really our political system is failing everything. And we need to fix that.
There is a bit of a window or a door that makes the idea of wrongful conviction an easier door for you to understand why this is a human rights issue. The system is putting away individuals for crimes that they did not commit, opens the door to prison itself and to looking at humanity of prison as a system. And we know that the lifespan of individuals who do go to prison is shorter than individuals who don't go to prison. The impacts on their mental and physical health can be overstated.
You gotta give me proof that anything is possible.
One of the challenges for folks who are wrongfully convicted is that they're not free. And Obie, but for some very unusual circumstances, would probably still be sitting in prison. So when folks ask, well, how many folks have been wrongfully convicted, we can never really answer that. We can answer how many have been identified and then released, which is in the hundreds, in California. But we really don't know how many are in there that didn't commit the crime.
When you look at the statistics, you'll see that African Americans make up over 50% of governmental misconduct when it comes to exoneration. When individuals are plucked out of their communities, they're taken from their spouses, their partners, their children, their parents, taken from the entire community who misses out on what this person might be able to contribute.
Remember the individuals. Remember the person. Focus on them as men, as women, as husbands, as fathers, as brothers, as cousins, as folks who struggle with day-to-day life, just like we all do. Except we carry a much bigger burden. And the burden that was placed on their shoulders, not by their choosing and not by their doing. And that's really, I think, the heart and soul of Exonerated Nation. And that's what drives healing and leadership retreat. That's what drives the home packages, and that's what drives the legislation.
Take this energy and go back to this moment. Take this good energy, this good positive energy, and put it forth towards some good positive thoughts on how to manifest this next retreat that we're going to be doing. Use this energy to try to highlight and point out those things that I heard from them that they need. Remember that energy. This is remember that, you know what I mean? So that you can establish the things that they need.
It's understanding what my purpose was, and then kind of seeing what other people would figure out what their purpose is from across the country. Keep going, put the work in, go help others, uplift and empower others to come back. So hopefully this grows.
It's great, man, being part of this group, this family. This is like fantastic. I just lost the words.
Very good, very calm, very chaotic life. This is definitely going to help me be a better leader, fuel me forward as we continue on our path of reform. It'll give me a lot more energy, a lot more focus, and a lot more tools for sure to be able to keep myself healthy as I embark on this journey of reform.
Just communicating with others and seeing them again and getting feedback. It's just to know that the same type of situation I go through here, others are as well. They learn from it. Friendly, but I don't really have a lot of friends. I call friends, associates, and when I come to this community, I just say thank you to the organization for the invite and for giving me this opportunity to do a piece of this, because
one thing I do want to share is that I was doing it on the inside, and I haven't done it since I've been out. That was really great for me. It felt good to be able to use some of the tools that I used to use out here and for a good purpose.
It's almost like a family reunion when you've been to these retreats or you know something. A lot of these honorees, us get back together as like a family affair, you know what I mean? And we all have the same kind of issue, and so we're all here as a family.
It's a place that touches inside of your soul, so that you're able to, get back in touch with yourself and to do the things that we need to do for self-healing. And sometimes we do need a gentle breeze. We just stop and smell the roses. So that's what this did. It was a reminder to be gentle with ourselves.
The arrogance of the state of California is, there was no law on the books or anything on the books that says if we make a mistake, this is what we're supposed to do. So it shouldn't be our duty or our goal or our job, right? But when there's a systemic wrong and there's no remedy for it, right? People take action and that's how laws get, right? So that's how we started. That's how I got involved in Exonerated Nation.
Wrongful convictions is a human rights issue. Imagine justice. To learn more and to donate, go to exoneratednation.org and donate today.
Forgive me for my emotion. I tell people all the time, prison may turn me into a big old soul. When I was 18 years old, they took me from my home, and then subsequently a year later, they framed me and put me in prison. And after staying there for 18, 19 years, there's some scars that's really hard to sort of cover up. This is one of them. I try my hardest not to do this so I can get through a presentation or a talk without it, but it seemingly always get a hold to me, so forgive me for that. Good afternoon, everybody.
I do.
And thank you all for coming. Before I say another word, before I say anything else, I want to thank Justin Peterson, the organization, and the family for opening his door. Justin Peterson has been spending decades doing this. Doing something that most of the country still isn't doing. And for figured out, they treat people who have been locked out of financial systems, like human rights, been like they have no space in the community. They help repair credit. They help the community build. This is not a small thing that Justin Peterson does. That's philanthropy. Standing up, helping the individuals in your community is true philanthropy. And when philanthropy like this meets a community like ours, exonerated community, something powerful happens. As I said, my name is Obie Anthony. Myself and Fidelis Walker founded Exonerated Nation back in 2015, 2016. I spent 17 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. I say that not to shock you. I say it because the man standing in front of you today is not the man they tried to arrest. Every single thing I'm going to share with you over these next 20 minutes exists because somebody, a lawyer, an advocate, a stranger, a family member, and yes, organizations just like Justine Peterson, refuse to let my life be the erroneous, the final word. So it brings me to, why do we exist? Why do we exist? Exonerated Nation was born out of a stubborn truth. Wrongful convictions is a human rights issue. Not a legal glitch, not a paperwork problem, not a footnote in the criminal justice reform conversation, a human rights issue. On the same shelf as torture, on the same shelf as forced disappearance, as the same as the denial of dignity by the state. When the state takes decades or 2 or 3 of a human being's life, then one day opens the door and say, go free. Don't hand them a bus ticket. Don't give them a way or direction to go. That's not justice. That is abandonment dressed up as freedom. So, at Exonerated Nation, we are the North Star. Everything that we do, every retreat, every bill, every dollar we raise, ladders us up to one thing: a restoration bill of rights for exonerees across these United States. When the state takes multiple years and then says someone release them into freedom without any services, they have a duty, in other words, to restore those individuals who they've done harm to. By definition, the word exonerate means to restore a person to them whole selves, but the states are not doing that. A codified, and what we're talking about when we talk about a restoration bill of rights, is a codified, enforceable set of rights that says if the state took your freedom, the state owes you a real pathway home and back to life, dignity. And it's not a charitable thing. The same right has been given over to victims of crime. Same rights has been given over to our veterans. It's the same rights that we also deserve when we enter back into a community in which we was ripped away from. The documentary that we just showed a little bit of our retreats that we host. And as you've seen on there, there's people from all over the United States, men and women alike. One of the more shocking things is that most times people don't even believe that individuals sits in prison innocent. They tend to want to say, well, what mistake happened? Or what did you do? Or did you really do it? Or didn't you really do it? Type of questions. And what happens is that it continues to demoralize and to maybe continue to humiliate an innocent individual who suffered in prison for decades, only to question them after they have been exonerated and set free back out into the community. So we host healing retreats to help our community navigate through those struggles, help our community heal from those harms, help our community reintegrate back with their family members and back into society, to be able to get a job, to be able to hold a job, to be able to find proper therapy, and those things. And so at Exonerated Nation, until those gaps are filled, we choose to stand in, to make sure that our community have a bridge and not fall back into the pit in which has been created for them, which is the pit of hell and destruction, when you be set free without anything, without no restoration of credit, without no restoration of Social Security, without no restoration of housing, none of those things. And they just set people free. Well, your body, just because exoneration happened doesn't mean that you're free. I've seen at the end, my sister Gloria Kelly, who came home after 19 years in her older age. She couldn't have kids. She couldn't find a husband. It destroyed her. She used the rest of her life until she passed to advocate for women's rights when they come home. How they destroy the women is a little different than how they destroy the men during those incarcerations, specifically, particularly when you're looking at, you can go to prison for crimes against the baby or crimes against a child. Women who suffer in prison, they don't get mammograms, they don't get pap smears, they don't get none of those things, in other words, that keeps the person healthy, let alone the mind. And then they're released out into a community after decades and decades of their lives being taken, only to come home to find themselves in the struggle, not being able to reestablish friends, not to being able to make new friends, not to being able to find mates, to go on without child. Those things there are consistently part of our healing process. We realize at Exonerated Nation that healing is not a one-stop shop. They can't come to one retreat and think that that was it. They understand that the toys and tools that we give them to go home with is to be used in practice on a consistent basis, to follow up. And so after our retreats, we follow up. We don't allow a whole year to go by before we touch back bases with them. We follow up right after. How's things been going? Have you been utilizing the tools and toys that you was able to gather here at the retreat? How is that working? Your body, what we understand is your body does not know it's free yet. After multiple years of incarceration, the body still feels that it's on you. That is the stress and the trauma that is held within the mind. And so when we walk out, our nervous system is still this way. We still look over our shoulders. We have anxiety. We have paranoia issues. There's a lot of different things that the body still has not recently released out over that time. Because your system is trained for years, sometimes for decades, to expect violence, to expect surveillance, to expect that the person right next to you might be the person that want to kill you. This is the life that I had to live for 19 years. Only to come home with no opportunity for mental health services. It was just a door open and go out and figure it out. That didn't sit well with myself. It was asking me a few times, what was it like coming home after you was exonerated? It was a struggle. A year went by, I couldn't find a job. 9 months almost went by before I even had an ID in my hand. I had to take a newspaper article that had been out there to keep with me as a purpose of ID because it had my picture and my name on it. And it was in the paper. That was the only form of ID that I had. When you heard my board member talk about me going to the state capitol in Sacramento in California. I had none of those things. They were more concerned about how can they stop this from happening versus helping me after what they did to me. And so, Exonerated Nation started with the main purpose and goal, in other words, to not allow for that to happen to the next person after myself.
Do you need a handkerchief or something? Do you need a handkerchief or something?
Oh, yeah, I got some tissues right here. Thank you, I appreciate it. This is what our healing retreats are. What are our healing retreats? They are trauma-informed. They're led by licensed clinicians who specialize in complex post-traumatic stress. They pair clinical care with something you cannot manufacture, peer-to-peer circling. We do somatic work because trauma lives in the body before it lives in our stories. And oftentimes one always remind our community that, I used to watch Seinfeld a lot when I was in there. I love Seinfeld, particularly George. George is my favorite. Kramer was great. But George really changed me in a way that I was unexpected. It was an episode when he went into the restaurant with Jerry, and George was fed up with how things had been in his life. And he told Jerry, I'm doing just the opposite, Jerry. I used to drink nothing but tea, I want coffee. I didn't do this, he didn't talk to the ladies, and he got up and went to the bar, he started speaking with the young lady at the bar. Everything changed for George. Things were starting to happen in a positive direction, and after that he told Jerry, that's it, Jerry, I'm living my life in the opposite. I took that statement to mean, change your words, change your life. And so I no longer was calling certain things, certain words. So I didn't call things a problem, I only called it a challenge. Because I realized that every challenge, there's a simple solution to every situation. And so I realized that in doing those small things there, helped me hold on to myself by way of not giving in to some of the debilitating pressures from the correctional officers and institutions for being while I was there in prison. At our healing retreats, I've watched men who spent 22 years inside sit down at the retreat tables and cry for the first time. Never having an opportunity after being sitting in prison for those many years to show that emotion. Always having to be that tough guy exterior. So when they came home, that continued on. Again, still, that lives in our system. It lives within our nervous system. I've watched women, reunite with their adult daughters. A daughter who was 3 years old when they took their mother. Speaking about Susan Millen, her daughter was 3 years old. They took Susan Millen and locked her up for a murder she didn't commit. She came home 17 years later. Her daughter was now in her 20s. And understanding one another, being with one another was a challenge. The last time she seen her mother, they were sitting at McDonald's when the police came in there and took her from her mother. Took the mother from the child. And so to see them together and watch that reunification, to watch that healing happen within the family was a powerful thing. And it's one of the main reasons why we host the retreats that we do. With Exonerated holding space, there's no cameras in there for us. There's no cameras there. There's no performances going on. It is just us sharing our testimony with one another. Realizing and understanding that the stories that was created out of a narrative that was made up is what got us put in prison. And so we sit on our testimony because we realize that is the truth. Those are the facts. And it's not a story, it's not a narrative, it's not something that was made up. And so that's why we share our testimonies, to make sure that individuals have an understanding and are educated. I remember, I wasn't never a Bible thumper, but I do remember in the Bible where it talks about the innocent will be vindicated. And we realized and understood that. And I shared it with our community as a way, in other words, to continue in our space of healing. So, from healing to policy. There we talked about some of the things that Exonerated Nation was able to accomplish in the state of California, and as you heard one of my board members, it's not just about California. It's not just California exonerees. Here in the state of Missouri, Missouri is responsible for 36 exonerations. Recently just executed another innocent man, Maurice Williams, Marcellus Williams. Just here, recently, a year and a half ago, 2 years. Talk about Dale Burton, that's right here from out of Missouri, or talk about Ellen Reasonover. These things happen across the United States and not isolated to one particular state. Prosecutorial misconduct is the same prosecutorial misconduct in California, the same prosecutorial misconduct happened in New York. Same ineffective assistant counsel happens in California, the same things happen down in Texas and up in Minnesota and out in South Dakota. It doesn't change. It's one system doing the same thing to individuals across the nation. And anytime a system can come and take an innocent person from their home and incarcerate them, we all have to stand up, not only as a community, but as families and members of that same community, realizing, understanding that they cannot argue. One of the things that we proved in the state of California is that it can get done, that it can happen. And so we realized that to pursue a pathway of healing for our community, that sometimes you do have to knock on legislative doors. You do need to create reform. You do need to create laws. There are things that need to happen. As you heard my brother Q. Ellis Walker state so eloquently, it should not be on us to clean up the government's mess. They destroyed my life, his life, Susan's life, Heidi's life. They destroyed our lives, and why are we the ones that have to be responsible for having to pick up the pieces after they pushed us off the wall and broke us like Humpty Dumpty? And so, but, Rick emphasized to me is that when those things happen, you have to realize and appreciate when there is a necessary need. That you have to stand up and do the things that are not being done. And that's what JP does here in Missouri and all over. They stand up for individuals that couldn't stand up for themselves. They help the community. Those individuals who have been blocked out by the system. And so what we propose and what we pursue and what we're looking at nationally is these 3 plans: education, healthcare, and housing. Understanding that when you come home without a place to stay, you cannot get an ID. You need an address. Without stable housing, you can't get mental health work. Without stable housing, you cannot get a job. Without stable housing, you cannot repair your credit. You cannot repair your work history and or rental history. None of those things. And one of the biggest issues that we face after exoneration, 20, 30 years, is the erasing of that. So most systems around the United States, what happens is that after a decade in prison, your ID, your thing is removed from the system. And so when you come back, you have to gather that, your birth certificate, your social security card, all of those things to go down there to receive an ID. But like in some cases, in most cases, family members pass on. They move. Things get scattered. And then you come home to nothing. You have to figure out how to go about to go get a social security card, just to get this part of, just to get an ID. You have to send in for your birth certificate, all which takes time. And that's why, again, it took me 6-9 months to get an ID. Because when I came home, I didn't have my social security card. My mother did die. My family did move. I came home to nothing. Scattered pieces. I had to go stay with an attorney who helped to get me out. And so, our planks and our goal, as you heard me say, is to establish those things. Housing across the United States, education, because we realize the importance in that, and healthcare, mental health care, and so that we do not always have to be torn down by the trauma in which was inflicted upon us. California has done some things to move in that direction. As you see on there, we had an opportunity to get AB 701 passed, which is a housing bill. Housing bill gives exonerated individuals in the state of California 4 years up to support. It gives them $5,000 upon release. They can move anywhere around the United States. It goes 25% above the market rate. It's attached to the same opportunities that college individuals get. That's AB 701. That is the benefit of when the affected body goes talk to the individuals who have affected them so they can see the harm in which they've done. So it's very important for us to always share our testimony in these settings. Education, because we realized that it was a lack of education that ultimately put us in the situation that we was in the first place, sitting in the courtroom, listening to people communicate in languages in which we did not understand. Mental health, because none of those things would be of a benefit if I am mentally unstable. Consistently depressed, consistently stressed out, consistently high on anxiety. Those things there are prohibitive to a life success and the person's re-entry back out here into the community. So that brings me to why we're here today. And now I have to be honest about why today matters so much. It's because everything I just described, the retreats, the bills, talking about the national index, now none of these move without people like us here in this room. None of this moves. So let me tell you what's on the table today. It's a law firm by the name of K. McLean and Bernarski. And I mean, I'm still trying to catch up on my technology. I've been on for a little while. I just learned how to, hit that exit tab, hit this tab. Which brings me over. So everything I just described, the retreats, the bills, the national index, none of this moves without people like us here in this room. The law firm is a law firm out in California called K. McLean Bernarski. And they so gracefully give us an opportunity with a $25,000 match to help us meet our goal of $50,000. Very appreciative of, it's a civil law firm, of their support, very appreciative of the community support, understanding the necessary need to help, right? So help helps help and hurt hurts hurt. Those individuals that have been helped, help other individuals. People that have been hurt, look to hurt other individuals. And they do it in multitudes of different ways. People who have been helped, they like, hey, look, can I help you across the street? How are you doing today? Can I take care of that for you? People who have been hurt consistently have a frown on their face. What are you looking at? Don't say nothing to me. I'm not having nothing. You say hi, they look at you like you didn't say nothing. Those are individuals who have been hurt. And they consistently repeat those things. Today, I'm appreciative of K. McLean Bernarski and Led. That's Ron K. I know he's gone, constantly talking about Ron. McLean, his name is Devin McLean, Merlin Bernarski, and Barry Led for their generous, for a generous opportunity for and help us to reach our goal of $50,000. Every dollar you give through the end of July gets doubled. So $100 turned to $200, $200. $1,000 turns to $2,000, $2,500 turns to $5,000. To lattice us to the moment where we're able to offer exonerating individuals, their families, to not only come to our retreats. This is a photo from our recent Hike for Justice that was held up in Mill Valley. Where I think it was almost 87, 90 individuals who came out to not only be with the community, but to learn about exonerations, to learn about our healing, to learn what does it feel like to be within community. is to get out into community. And we was really appreciative of the community coming out and supporting. Even individuals was there that we had met the night before, prior to the hike. They're like, what are you guys doing here? We're having a hike. Well, where is it at? It's in Mill Valley up at the Tennessee Trails. Can we come? Yeah, absolutely. They came. And that's building community with community. And I really appreciate them for coming. Now, this is not a hypothetical fundraising target. This is a real match from a real firm with a real deadline. If you have ever wondered whether your giving actually moves a mission, this is the moment where the math is undeniable. You can give today at exoneratednation.org. That's exoneratednation.org. And I promise you, every dollar goes into two things that matters most: healing our people and changing the laws that harm them. I appreciate everyone for your time and for hearing our stories, hearing our testimony, hearing my testimony about how the system decided to but to dispose of me without any regard, thinking that disposal was a finality. Thought that they can bury the truth, thought that somehow or another that the will of the Creator would not be done, and that the truth would not set me free. But here I stand today, based upon the fact that, again, I never gave up on my innocence because I knew He knew. And that resonated inside of me to help me stay strong and focused. And not only to do that, but to come home and do as it tells me in my book, to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves, to protect the widow, to protect the homeless and the orphans, to do the work and not just talk about the work. So I thank you, Robert. Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you, Justin Peters and the family. Thank you for the community for coming out and sharing my story. And thank you for everyone online for listening in. And I would definitely appreciate all your help and donations.
Obie, let's see if anybody has any questions. Are there any questions in the audience that you'd like to ask Obie?
Are there any specific laws that are being looked at for Missouri?
Now?
Yeah.
Yes. So right now, Missouri, you guys recently you guys have had a bill up. I think it was a Democrat out of St. Charles area that was trying to remove the death penalty from out here.
Yeah.
That was one of the bills that was being talked about. And also, I also know that the compensation is back up on the roster again. Talking about compensation, one of the things that I'm out to do in regards to that again is that to change that. You heard me earlier talk about changing words, changing life. Compensation is attached to victims, so you have victims' compensation and workers' compensation. Exonerated individuals need to be restored according to how they was exonerated. So you should restore them back to their whole self according to what they are, and not in respect to who you're trying to make them to be. So when they send in an exonerated person to a compensation board, they have to do exactly the same thing if you was a victim. Prove that you have been victimized. Where a state refuses to acknowledge that victimization of an individual, it creates where that person have to then go back and then basically have another trial because of it. So yes, compensation is back on the table out here, trying to move it up to $50,000 a year. And it's another bill too, it's slipping my mind that it's up there. I think it has to do with identification, moving it from the 6-pack over to the single, which is a more reliable identification process for individuals.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to comment. I don't know if we spoke about this, but JP Christine Peterson is proud to, from its treasure, offer the first $25,000 to the action. So I wanted to be clear about that. I don't know if you knew that. Did I say 25,000?
You said
25,000.
25,000.
You're looking correct now. 25,000.
You didn't say that.
Did I say 25,000?
Yeah.
I just wanted to get your attention. 2,500. Excuse me. So that will be again. That will be. So your eyes went like this.
I know,
Not only.
I'm betting my back.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to you, Rob. Over the years, you have been,
It's for the team.
and I appreciate the team and the family. I didn't get a chance to express this earlier. I've been knowing Rob now maybe 5, 6, 7 years or something around here, and he has always been the same. He's been this way to myself. He's helped the community, our community. I really appreciate that. Thank you again, always for the kindness.
Any other questions? So Obie will be here if you guys want to talk to him first for a couple of minutes. If he's sitting over there, we'll give him a second, get some water and stuff, but then we can come over, say hi, and have a little conversation. Alright, I'm gonna end it. And then, before we leave today, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Today wasn't about changing the past. It wasn't about changing what happened. Every one of us has the power to become an opportunity for someone else. At Justine Peterson, we've always believed that communities are transformed one opportunity, one relationship, and one act of courage at a time. For more than 2 decades, we've worked to remove barriers, expand access, and to help people build brighter futures. Today, conversation is not a departure from that work, it is the next step in our commitment to creating communities where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. As you leave today, I invite you to ask yourself one question. What role will I play in changing what happens next? I want to say it again. What role will I play in what happens next? Because the measure of a community is not found in how we respond when life is easy. It is found in how we respond when our neighbors need our help. May they inspire us to open doors, create opportunities, and stand beside those who are rebuilding their lives and others' lives. And may we never forget that every investment we make in a person has the power to change a family, strengthen a community, and leave a legacy that lasts for generations. That is who we strive to be. That is who Justine Peterson is. Building assets and changing lives. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and thank you for helping us to build a community where hope is restored, opportunity is expanded, and every person has a chance to write a better next chapter. Thank you for your time.
And Yolanda, just a reminder, in October, we're gonna do this again with veterans.
Yeah. Oh, and in October, our next Sharing the Why event is, we've already got the date, October
I think it's 15th, but
15th.
but look for more to
And
come.
it'll be in this location, and our Sharing the Why is, for that event will be veterans. And if you would like to speak with Obie, feel free to come sit and see. Make it fit.
Wendy, I'll send you kids.